Did Jesus contradict himself? Let's look at two verses in the Gospel of John that at first glance seem to be saying opposite things. First, in John chapter 5, verse 31, Jesus says, "If I alone testify about myself, my testimony is not true." But then in John 8:14, he says, "Even if I testify about myself, my testimony is true." So which is it? In one passage, he says his testimony isn't true if he's the only one saying it. And in another, he's saying it is true, even if he's the only one saying it. That sounds like a contradiction until you look at the context. In John 5, Jesus had just healed a man on the Sabbath, and the Jewish leaders are angry, not only because he broke their Sabbath tradition, but because he claimed equality with God. So Jesus responds using their own legal framework. According to the law of Moses, in Deuteronomy 19:15, where it says that no one's testimony could be accepted on its own, that you need 2 or 3 witnesses for a claim to be considered valid. That's why Jesus says, if I testify about myself, my testimony is not true. He's not saying he's lying. He's saying you won't accept my claims unless I meet your legal standard. Then he goes on to name his witnesses: John the Baptist, the miracles he performed, the voice of the Father, and the scriptures themselves. So in John 5, Jesus is meeting them on their own terms, giving them the evidence they said they needed. Now in John 8, the Pharisees challenge him again, this time after Jesus boldly declares, "I am the light of the world." And they respond, "You're testifying about yourself. Your testimony is invalid." But now Jesus doesn't play by the rules. He says, even if I do testify about myself, my testimony is true because I know where I came from and where I am going. And in other words, I'm not another man making claims. I came from heaven. I know who I am, and my Father confirms it. And just in case they missed it, he reminds them again in verses 17 and 18, and it says, "Your own law says that the testimony of 2 people is true. I testify about myself, and the Father who sent me testifies about me." So even by their own standard, Jesus still provides 2 witnesses. Here's another way that you can think about it. Imagine someone walks into a hospital and says, "I'm a world-renowned surgeon." Most people wouldn't believe them just based on their word. You'd want to see credentials, degrees, license, case records, maybe even testimony from other doctors. That's John chapter 5. Jesus is saying, you don't take my word for it, so I'll point to the evidence you'll accept. But now imagine that same surgeon pulls out documented credentials, articles they've published, and glowing endorsements from the country's top medical boards. At that point, even if they say it themselves, their identity and track record prove it's true. That's John 8. Jesus is saying, I don't need human approval. I know where I come from and where I'm going. My Father and I both testify, and that's enough. So no, these aren't contradictions. In 2 different situations, 2 different audiences, one